Okay, so in the last, just to recap, I think some of you might have already figured out things, and but for people who haven't yet still thinking about it, let's just recap and see how much we have understood. Right. So we said that we have the CPU, and then we have the cache. There is, let's say, four positions available in the cache. Maybe there are four positions available in the cache, and there is this track structure along with the cache, right? And then there is this main memory. Initially, maybe the cache has blocks one, block two, block three, and block four. So when a new block is requested by the CPU, I have brought this block. Now uh, I have to keep this block in the cache. Of course, there is one more option that you can do. You can say that I will not keep the block in the cache. Yes, that can also be possible. I mean, you can say that I will not keep this particular block in the cache. Yes, you're completely allowed to do it. But since we know that there is something called temporal locality and spatial locality, we say that, okay, I'll keep the block in B5. Now the question is, where do I keep it? Do I keep it here, 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 or here? Right. So that's the question. So do I keep it here, here, or here, or here? So, and we saw that there are replacement policies available for it. So we said that either we will kick out a block which is least recently used, or maybe a random policy, or not recently used, or something like that. Right? So we saw different replacement policies. You can come up with your own replacement policy to pick a block which has to be kicked out. The logical thing that makes general sense is that it's the least recently used, which means that which block was least recently used, that block I kick out. Okay, all those things are fine. I'm assuming you have followed till now. The question was, what happens if there is a write that is generated by the CPU? Let's say the this particular block, instead of just the data being here, the CPU had generated some data here. Right? So let's say it had updated some the value of B1 here, and now you have chosen the candidate B1 to be kicked out. So now, do I write it back to the main memory or not, was the question. So that's where we got stuck on. We said, should B1 be returned back to the main memory or not? That's the question. And then we said, I think we tried to figure out many reasons. So what happens first is what happens on a write. So that's the first question that we want to answer. We said that initially there is block B1, maybe. Now the CPU, before it can generate B5, it has generated. So the way the CPU accesses were, B1 was read, B2 was read, B3 was read, B4 was read, and then there was B1, which was write. So which means that it is trying to write some data to the block B1. So now the question is, do I write it do I write only here, or do I write here? Do I write update here and in the main memory? So that's the question that we are stuck on. So now the CPU is ready to change this value to B1. So now do I write it only here, or do I write it in the main memory? So what was your answer? So where should I write it? Should I write it only in the cache, or should I write it in the cache and the main memory? Should I write it in the cache and the main memory, or should I write it only in the cache? Yeah, any answer is fine. This is what we have already discussed. So it's just a recap.
Sir, only in the cache is fine, but when it get replaced, we have to override the value again.
Yes. So now the question is, let's say I write it only in the cache. I don't write it in the main memory. So I have updated only this content. I haven't updated in the main memory. So I have updated only the contents of this particular block. Now, let's say the CPU continued its accesses. So it said generated B2 read, B3 read, B4 read, and then it said B5 read. So now when you brought B5, and if you had implemented least recently used, you want to kick out this block. So now you want to kick out this block. So you want to kick out this block and keep B5 in this position, and keep B5 in this position, in this place. So now, do I write B1 back to main memory or not is the question. So do I write B1 back to the main memory or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So we have to write B1 back to the main memory. Why are you saying B1 should be written back to the main memory?
There is no substitute for it. So kind of.
So let's say if the CPU had chosen B2 to kick out, would you have written B2 to main memory?
No, sir.
No, right? So I don't have. The reason is why? Why is that I don't have to
Because
write
it was
B2 to
not
the main memory?
changed.
Yeah,
The
please.
value was not changed.
Yeah, because it was. Yeah, because B2 was not changed, right? B2 was not changed. But B1 was changed, B2 was not changed. So if B2 was replaced, I don't have to write to the main memory. But if B1 is replaced, I have to write to the main memory. So if B1 is replaced, I have to write to the main memory. So I have to write to the main memory. But now how do I know that a particular block has been changed or not? How do I know
So
that?
we discussed the dirty bit option.
Yeah, so we have a dirty bit, right? So we said that we have a dirty bit. We said that the tag is now not just only storing the tag part of the address, but it is also storing one extra bit per entry. And this we call it as the dirty bit. So initially this dirty bit is 0. Whenever the CPU generates a write to a particular block, this dirty bit is set to 1. So since B1 was changed, I also write this 1 here. And when the block is removed, I see whether the dirty bit is 1 or 0. If the dirty bit is 1, then I write it back to the main memory. If it is 0, I just discard that value. So do you think this works? I mean, how many of you have understood till here? Please answer the poll. If you haven't understood, please ask me questions. So I am assuming since we already discussed, you might already know this. So, okay, except to everybody is okay. 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 So now I see the dirty bit. If the dirty bit is 1, I write it back to the main memory. If the dirty bit is 0, I don't write it back to the main memory. So I am assuming till now everything is crystal clear. So I will ask you a question: is there any drawback with this design? Do you think there is a drawback with this design? Yes, in bits of address. No, actually, it is not. Okay, somebody has asked the question: is dirty bit in a bit of address? No. All right. So let's take a CPU address. Let's take a CPU address. Okay. So and then we already know this, right? So this is made up of tag, index, and offset. I hope everybody remembers this. The offset is the to log base to the box sets with respect to the log of base 2. The remaining bits are called tag, and I was storing only tag here. So initially I was storing only tag here. Initially, this is what was stored as part of the tag array. This particular thing. Initially it was only tag array. Right? Now, apart from this, let's say there were 8 bits here. Let's say there were 8 bits here. Now, apart from the 8 bits, I store one extra bit. So now the size of the tag array, so the size of the tag array here is, let's say it was 8 bits. It is 8 bits into 4 because there are 4 tags. So it was 32 bits. Now each tag is 9 bits into 4, it is 36 bits. So now there is one extra bit per tag. Is this clear? Okay, so we were looking, so now we said that there is one extra bit that we add, and that extra bit is not part of the address. Okay, so now since I think there are no more questions, can you tell me if there is a problem with this design, or do you think that this design is the perfect design, or can you make optimizations to this design? So is this design perfect? So is there no bottleneck in this design? Yeah, any answer is fine. Whatever you think is bottleneck. I know it's an afternoon, so you might be sleepy. Just think about any problem in the design. Anything that comes to your mind?
Sir, if dirty bit of B1 is set and when we are replacing it, then it will take some time to reach main memory. So, and if like the CPU is accessing B1 again, then it will have some stall because it has to update the B1 value first.
Okay, excellent. So how many of you understood what he's saying? So what Amit Bhai is saying is this. What he's saying is, let's say I start this design, okay, and then I kick out this block B1, right? So this B1 was dirty, so I have kicked out this block, and this is being written to the main memory. In the meanwhile, the CPU again generated a request for B1. Now B1 is no longer here; it is somewhere here in the network, or it's somewhere in the main memory. So I have to wait until it has been written to the main memory. That's what he's saying. That's what you're saying, right? So it has to wait for the entire thing to complete, the write to complete, and then only it can read B1. That's what he's saying. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you think, does anybody think that this is the problem? This is a problem? Do you think this might be a problem?
Sir, I don't know, but load also takes 100 cycles, but I don't know how the operations are like. I don't know how it's implemented in the hardware. But like, let's assume this memory write is taking 100 cycles, and then load is also taking 100 cycles. It's actually lagging behind, right? Does that make sense?
What is lagging behind? No.
Like
So
the second, like the second
the second
time,
access to B1, yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
you are
lagging
waiting
behind.
for 100 cycles plus 100 cycles. So you're saying it will take 200 cycles now.
No, not what I'm saying. So, is the hardware implemented in such a way that this won't cause an issue? Like, okay, let's say this write operation is currently at the 5th cycle, then V1, this call is coming in, and it is just at the first cycle, right? So will that cause an issue? That's my question.
No,
Like,
for write, do you stall? That's the question. So for write, do I need to stall?
depending on like, if you need the memory address to be completely written, then you should stop. Otherwise,
Yeah. So let's
you
say
can
you
continue.
design. Let's say okay. So the question is now slightly different. So what you are saying is, see, from the CPU there are two types of memory accesses. One is load, the other is store. For load, if I hit a, do I need to stall or can I continue execution in the pipeline?
You
If there's a
can
load,
you can continue.
can I continue execution? So how many of you think you can continue if there's a load, continue execution? So I
Except
have
for if you're
instruction fetch.
overwriting. If you're not overwriting something, then you have to take care of this, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So
it can
now,
just continue.
okay. So now where does load happen? Right. So the load happens here. Right. So there's a load that is here. Now, if this instruction 1 executes a load, do I need to stall? Will there be a stall until this load is complete, or can I allow the other instructions to continue execution? With whatever knowledge you know. Hey, come on here.
So it depends on
So how many of you
how you're planning
think
to do
that
the store thing, right?
to stall? How am I planning to do what?
So
Sorry, you are breaking. I'm not able to.
if it's a so can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's breaking. Let's see.
Sir, I think it's your internet.
It is my internet. Yeah, it might be my internet. Yes. Just a second. I think I will switch on my. Yeah, I'm not in Tirupati. I mean, just give me a second.
Sir, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hello, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, now I think it's better. But I think option. Is it okay now? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you were saying something. So there is a load that has this memory instruction. This memory unit has issued a load. Now, can I continue the execution of I2 before the load is complete? That's the question. Hello.
Yes, sir. But like dependencies, depending on
No,
dependencies of
no,
that
no. Right?
instruction.
No. It's not about dependency. It is not about dependency, right? So there's one more thing that doesn't allow the pipeline of instruction to continue if load is not complete. What is that? Okay. See, there is instruction fetch, instruction decode, register fetch, execute, memory, right, and write back. In between them, what is there?
The
Register.
registers.
Pipeline registers, right? So please don't forget there are pipeline registers here. So if the execution unit is taking 3 cycles, can I allow the second instruction to continue?
No, sir.
No. Why? Because there is something sitting here, right? It will be moved
Yes,
here.
sir.
It will be moved here only after this execution is done, right?
Yes, sir. So it will automatically stall if it needs to.
Yeah. So if there's a load and this load maybe goes to cache, right? So the load goes to cache and the cache takes say 8 cycles. Now, can you allow the second instruction? Can you allow the second instruction to a continue execution and complete? So can it
No,
do
sir.
something like this, right? Can it do something like this? Instruction fetch, instruction decode, register fetch, execute, memory. Can it do its own memory and then write back? No, you can't do that in your whatever MIPS pipeline that we are seeing. You can't do this because this is filled up by something. We don't know what this is filled up by, but this register has something, and you will be emptying this register only after you complete this operation, and this operation is load operation, right? And this load operation is going to the cache, getting the data. It is not a, of course, there can be dependency. That's why there might be a stall. But even then, the pipeline architecture is such a way that you cannot continue execution. This load is waiting. That's all. You can't do anything about it. Of course, in the computer architecture, you will see the architects like processors where they don't stall unless there is no dependency. But in whatever you have studied till now, you have to stall. I mean, there is no other way, right? So for load, you are stalling. So now let's see the memory, right? So for memory, for load, you have to stall until you have to finish, until I get data, until I get the data. Okay. So this should be clear. Is it clear for everybody? If you are not clear, please let me know. I can explain again, but that should be very clear in your mind that if in the pipeline, if there is a memory operation, if it issues a load, until the load fetches the data from the cache or the main memory, I am not worried. That particular instruction stalls, and since that particular instruction stalls, all other following instructions stall wherever they are because you cannot plug out something from the pipeline register. Right? Okay. So now the question was, if there is a store, if the memory had a store instruction, let's say it was instead of load, it was store. So the same thing, I had an instruction fetch. This is the same instruction, say I1, instruction fetch, instruction decode, register fetch, execute, memory, and write back. But now instead of having a load, I have a store. Now, let's say the store has been issued. Do you have to wait for the store to go to the cache, write it back, write it to the main, write it to the cache or to the main memory, and then only allow this?
No, sir,
No, right? Why should I not do that?
because I'm not writing anything to the register.
Yeah, but so do you just forget the store? So can I just forget the store?
Yes, sir. I
So
think.
if a later instruction needs the
Yeah.
updated value from the main memory,
Yeah.
it should not happen before this
Yeah,
is
right. Right. Let's say if the store generated some, let's say it was store, say 0, let's say it was a store from R1, let's say it was 0, R1 and R2. Right? Let's say the 0, R1 was 0x0. So you're writing to the memory location 0. And at some point in the pipe, some point in the program, you did a load and said R3, 0, R1, which was still again 0x0. Now you are again loading back from the main memory 0. But if you had forgotten writing the store, you would get some junk value. You can't do that. So now, if I ask you, should the store wait? Should the store wait for the memory operation to complete? Is your answer yes or no?
Yes, sir. No, I think it's great then.
Yeah. Anybody else? With any other answer? Okay. I don't know. Please wake up, think about it, or else I start calling names and then I'll be asking questions. Manjunath, Vasam? Manjunath?
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Can you tell me what's the, do I need to wait for the store or should not wait for the store to complete?
I think you should wait.
Okay. Does anybody have any other answer? You don't have to wait.
So if you don't wait, then you have to find some other way so that later when something calls for that same value, you have to either use another form of forwarding, sort of something.
Yeah.
And you also have to keep track.
Okay. So generally what people do, what processors do is the load, there is no way. Load, you have to store. There is no other way because you have to get the data. You cannot just get some junk data and say, this is your data. So for load, you have to store. But for store, you are the one who is generating the data. So it is your prerogative when you actually write the data back to the cache. So they have something called a store queue where they write the data to store queue and allow the CPU to continue execution. In the background, somebody else will pick up the data from the store queue and write it to the cache. Right. It's like that. You don't have to, it's like your garbage collection, right? So you don't go to the garbage dump and keep that garbage there. You keep it at this location and you continue your normal life. Somebody else at their at their working hours would pick up that garbage, put it in a truck and keep it somewhere else again. And there at their, let's say at their convenience, they will pick up that garbage and then put it in city dump or something, right? You don't have to wait for the city dump to complete because you are generating that garbage. But if you are consuming, say, let's say you're consuming onions, right? Or you're consuming some food product, you have to wait for the food. Let's say the food product has completely emptied in your city. You have to wait for the food product to be actually grown by the farmer, transported back to your city, and from the city to the shop, and then from the shop to your house, and then only you'll be able to consume that particular vegetable or whatever it is. Because now you are a consumer, so you have to wait. You are stalled for such a long duration because your city ran out of that particular vegetable. But if you are generating the garbage, you don't wait for the garbage to be taken away from your home and be processed and kept it in the city filling or something like that, right? Because you are generating it. Similarly, stores are not in the critical path. Loads are in the critical path. So in any execution, if you take, loads are in the critical path because they stall the pipeline. Stores are generally not in the critical path. Of course, if you are right, we said that there's a store queue. It's kind of a buffer. That buffer might get filled up. Then there is no way that there's no way that you will have to wait for the stalls because you can't write anything else to the buffer. In such cases, it's in the critical path. But in general, it's not in the critical path because the CPU has generated the store. It just pushes that store to some location and then continues the execution. The only thing that you have to make sure is when the next instruction comes, you cannot directly allow the instruction to go to the cache and check for that store. Where should it check first? So where should it check first?
In the buffer.
In the buffer, right? So because I'm consuming that, right? So in the buffer, I check first. And if there's a hit in the buffer, I give it back. Right? So you can think about it that way. So similarly, in somebody was saying, right, like load, store, and this, like I think Amit Bhai was saying that it will take 100 cycles. So I don't have to wait for this 100 cycles. I mean, the data to go to the main memory. I don't have to wait for the 100 cycles, and the data goes to the main memory, and then I issue the load. So maybe once it is kicked out from the cache, maybe I keep it in a buffer, and then I allow the execution of the cache to continue. Only thing is, if there's a miss in this particular cache, I check the buffer first and then go to the main memory. That's how loads and stores are implemented. But anyway, we'll be seeing it in detail later as we go ahead in the course. But I hope at least you got an idea. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is loads are in the critical path of execution. Stores are not in the critical path of execution. This is one of the reasons that people have harassed stores. They have taken out. They have tried to optimize stores as much as possible to such an extent that it has become a headache. And there is something in x86 processors to maintain consistency. There is something called total store order and things like that we'll be seeing hopefully in this course itself. But anyway, stores are a special case and loads are a special case. They are two different things, both though they are memory operations. Okay, but anyway, we'll not, as I said, go into detail now itself. My question is, there's one more glaring problem with the design. I said having this write bit, and I write it to the main memory only if there is an update to that particular byte in the to the particular block in the cache. I write it to the main memory. But do you think that I can do something else other than this? Or do you think that there's an issue with this design?
Sir, so now since we have like this queue thing, if you add it to the store queue as soon as you modify it, instead of waiting for until it gets kicked out, then it has a better position in the queue later when you're trying to get it back.
No, the store queue is just like four locations. So when the store queue gets filled up, there is no way but you will have to stall even for a write. So let's for now forget that I told anything about store queue. Let's assume that there is no store queue. There is no queue here. Let's assume that there is no queue. There is one more glaring problem.
This doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one more glaring issue with this design. Can anybody tell me what?
Sir, before kicking B1, we need to store it first, and then we need to bring the thing, right? So it's like
no, why?
extra.
Why? No. I just kick it
otherwise,
out.
how will you do it?
I just kick it out, maybe write it to a buffer, and then read the data.
Okay, then it's fine.
Any other issue? So how much is this? Let's say, what's the block size?
Sir, I don't know. Sir, let's say the block is having, let's say 8 bytes, and only one of the bytes has been changed.
Yes, right. Yeah,
but if the dirty bit is set to 1, we have to change the whole block.
Yes, right. So now, let's say the block size is 64 bytes. The CPU has generated writes only to a single byte. You are not worried. As long as this particular block has changed, you are not worried which byte of that block has changed, right? Which byte of that block has changed. You are setting that bit to 1. And when the block is kicked out, you are writing the entire 64 bytes to the main memory. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Right. So,
yes, sir.
But can you do some optimization for this?
So instead of 1 bit, you can have a few more.
Yeah, instead of 1 bit, you might do it for every byte. But if you are an architect, would you do that? So will you have extra writes or will you have extra bits in the hardware?
Extra writes, I think.
Yeah, extra writes, right?
Can you do them parallelly? So can you do the writes parallelly?
Writes parallelly in the sense?
As in, like, if you have to write 64 bits in one
Yeah, in
write,
general, 64
can
bytes
you
can
write
be
all
written
of
in the main.
them?
Yes, yeah, 64 bytes
Yeah,
can
so
be
can you
written.
write the whole block parallelly?
Yes, yeah, but what if my block size is 128 bytes? Then it takes 2 seconds.
Yes, so then maybe we can go with more bits if you want.
Yeah, there is one more issue with this design. There's one more optimization you can think about. What do we, when you see a C program, right? What do generally people do? People say they write something like this. They write A is equal to 3, and after some time they say A is equal to 3 into 1, and then after some time they will say A is equal to B into 3, where B is equal to 1. Right? And then after some time, maybe they write A is equal to C into say 1, where C is 3. Right? Every time you're generating the same value, right? You're actually generating the same value. But if suppose this block was kicked out here, here, you would have set the dirty bit as 1, even though the data has not changed. You are not checking the data has changed or not, right? Here, you didn't check whether the data has changed or not. Right? You just said, since the CPU generated it, right? I am setting this bit to dirty bit to 1, and then writing it back to the memory. Agree?
Yes, sir.
But I should not have done it, right? Because the data might have actually not been changed. And do you think that such a case does not exist? Does such a case exist? Because generally, if you generally when the CPU starts, it initializes every maybe to 0, and then you say, okay, I will again do a for loop. Like generally, I've seen people writing a malloc or a calloc and initializing the memory, which means that the memory is already initialized to 0, and then they do for I equal to 0, I less than 1 billion, and write A of I is equal to 0. Which means that you are generating so many writes to the memory system, which means that you are not actually writing anything new to the system. So where will you catch such idiotic behaviors? Who will catch that such? Who will catch that? Catch such a behavior? Will you build a hardware where you will compare every write with the old value, or can somebody else figure that out?
Is it
Compiler.
a compiler?
Yeah, it's the job of the compiler to do such optimizations. The hardware will not build a comparator to figure out whether the value has actually changed or not. The compiler will figure out, okay, this guy is just keeps writing the same value. Of course, the optimization might not always be possible, but the compiler is intelligent enough to figure out that yes, this guy is dumb. He is just writing the value again and again. So maybe I might optimize the piece of code. Maybe I will reorder this piece of code such that the writes are minimized. So that's why compilers also is an important course, but that you will be studying in the next semester. Apart from this, forget about the compiler, forget about the write queue. Is this at least somewhat clear about the replacement policy? What I do when there is a write that is generated to the system? Is this clear? If there are any questions, feel free to ask me, because I know that this is a new topic. This is not like data structures and algorithms where you have already been exposed to this, maybe in terms of coding and things like that. These things you might not have thought about it. So if you have questions, please, there's no dumb question, there's no wrong question here. That's one of the beauty of architecture. Any question you might ask today might actually become a very good design in the next future. Right? No questions? Okay, so I am assuming you now understood what I should do with a write. Then we also saw in the last class, we also saw an equation. What did we saw? We saw average access time, average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. Right? We saw this equation. We said that the average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. What is hit time? Hit time is the time it takes to search in the cache and read the data. Right? So I am assuming that it includes both. In practice, it doesn't. There's a different formula that people use, but this is more or less this one that you will be using even for GATE, for any competitive exams. This is the formula. Nobody breaks down this formula unless you are an architect. So average memory access time is hit time. Hit time is the time it takes to search in the cache and read the data. Miss rate is the amount of accesses that you did not find in the cache. So miss rate is the number of misses divided by the number of accesses through the cache. That is the miss rate. Miss penalty is the amount of time it takes for you to go and get the data from the next level. From the next level. So if you have understood this, I will ask you a question. What is the miss rate of the main memory? In the example that we saw, or in the example that in the Qt stream that we were working on, what was the miss rate of main memory? What's the miss rate of main memory?
You never have a main memory
Yes,
miss, right?
yes. Till now, whatever we have studied, we never have a miss in the main memory. After 6-7 classes, I'll be adding one more component where the main memory will also start missing data. But now till now, whatever we have studied, the miss rate for main memory is 0. So how does my system design till now look like? I have a cache and then I have a main memory. These are the only two components that I have seen. And this of course has the pipeline. Right? So this is what I have seen till now. And this is what I call it as a cache. So this cache has some hit time. Maybe the hit time is say 2 cycles, whatever it is you want to take. Miss rate is say maybe 10%, which means that 10% of the accesses will miss in the cache. The miss penalty of this cache is nothing but the hit time of the main memory. The miss penalty of the cache is the hit time of the main memory. Why? Because if you miss in the cache, you have to wait for the main memory to get you the data. So if the main memory was taking 200 cycles, then you have to wait for the 200 cycles to get the data from the main memory and service to the CPU. So that's what we have seen till now. Okay. So now my goal as an architect, obviously, is to reduce the average memory access time. And why do I need to reduce the average memory access time? Because I want to reduce the stalls in the pipeline. Right. And why do I want to reduce the stalls in the pipeline? Because I want to make the processor faster. And why do I want to make the processor faster? Because I want to sell more chips. That's the only goal. Yes. Okay. So if I have to reduce the average memory access time, I have to reduce the hit time. I can reduce the hit time. I can reduce the miss rate. I can reduce the miss penalty. I can do any of this. I can reduce the hit time. I can reduce the miss rate. I can reduce the miss penalty. So now, can you tell me, just a second, I think somebody is asking a question. Okay, what's this question? Okay, I think, yeah, I think you have understood the question, right? I mean, I think you have understood it, right? Okay, let's continue. Okay, so now can you tell me, we'll take one component of the other. How can I reduce miss rate? So before this, have you understood till here? Is everybody understood till here? If you haven't understood, please ask me. I am more than happy to explain again. There are some components you might not have understood, like the store queue. There are some components which, like the write buffer, you might not have understood. That is still okay. But the gist of what happens on a write, when do I set a dirty bit? If the dirty bit is set, I write it to the main memory. Such things you should know. And this formula you should know. I mean, don't by heart this formula. If you have by hearted this formula, then you haven't understood it. You should know why we come across this formula, right? So that is more important. Okay. So I think everybody has understood. Okay. So now, how can I reduce the miss rate?
Increasing the size of cache.
Okay. One answer is increase the size of the cache. Okay, excellent.
A better replacement policy.
This cache size, a better replacement policy. Any other answers? There are multiple answers that you can come up with. Let's say I can't increase the caches. Let's say I can't. For now, because I don't like Aditya, I said I can't increase the cache. And since I don't like Devashi, I said I can't do any better replacement policy. This is the best replacement policy that I've come up with. Can you convince me to do something such that I can reduce the miss rate? So I want to reduce the miss rate.
Reduce set size.
Reduce the set size.
Number of set. I mean,
Yeah. Why are you reducing? Yes, good. Why are you reducing number of sets?
so that less number of collisions occur, and I can
Excellent.
store more and more.
Yes, right. So what? I mean, you don't have to say it as reduce the number of sets. You can just say it as increase the associativity. And apart from Aditya, if I increase the associativity, why does the miss rating decrease? If I increase the associativity, why does the miss rate decrease?
Because your conflict misses will reduce. You'll be able to store
Yes.
more things in the cache.
Yeah, right. So my conflict misses reduces, right? If I have a fully associative cache, the number of conflict misses are 0. If I have fully associative cache, the number of conflict misses are 0. So if I increase the associativity, I reduce the miss rate because I reduce the number of conflict misses. So I increase the associativity. Can I do something else other than this? Let's say I can't increase the cache size. I can't do a better replacement policy. I can't increase the associativity. Can I do something else?
So the other category of misses are the cold misses in the beginning. So if there's any way to fix that.
Yeah, one is fix the cold misses. Any other misses that you want to fix? Yeah, any answer is fine. So you have all the knobs with you, right? So you can come up with any answer you want. What is a cache made? Right? It's made up of sets, and what else is made up of?
So we can reduce the block size.
Who is this?
Shritesh.
Sorry, who answered this question? Yeah. Do you want to reduce the block size or increase the block size? Somehow your voice is not registering, and I mean, I think this is the third time I'm asking your name. Sorry about it. Somehow your voice is not registering. Do you want to reduce the block size or increase the block size?
So I think we must reduce the block size so that we can have more number of blocks in each set.
No, right? If you reduce the block size, what are you hitting upon? Are you hitting upon temple? You are hitting upon spatial locality, right?
Yes, sir.
If I have only 1 byte block, then you are not maintaining any spatial locality. You are not supporting spatial locality. So the number of misses will be very high, right? For every byte, you are going to the memory and bringing it back. See, if I reduce the block size, if I make the cache block size as 1 byte, then for every address the CPU generates, I have to go to the main memory and fetch it.
Yes, sir.
Let's say it was a streaming application. Let's say you're watching Netflix. You don't watch a movie randomly, right? You just move from left to right. So it's a streaming application. Now for every scene, you're going to the main memory and fetching it. But if you increase the block size, then you would have fetched half of the movie in the cache before the movie started playing itself, right?
Yes, sir.
So if I increase the block size, I reduce the miss rate because the spatial locality is good. Okay, let's say we all 4 answers are right. We'll see what's the problem with each of them. If I increase the cache size, yes, I reduce the miss rate. This is one of the best solutions. Instead of having instead of earning 1 lakh rupees, you earn $1 million. Your life is set, right? So I don't even have to teach. You don't have to study. That's it. But in general, in life, it's not possible. I am stuck with 1 lakh, right? So it's like that. So what happens if I increase the cache size? Instead of having 8 MB, if I have 16 MB, what happens?
It's expensive, plus your search time might increase.
Yes, let's say even if I am not worried about the search, even if I'm not worried about the cost, like I'm ready to work hard. If Google is ready to hire me and give me $1 million, obviously I'm ready to work hard. Not even $1 million. Even if they get me a job, I'm ready to work. But they obviously will not hire me, right? So the reason is because the search time increases. Because maybe I'm a dumb guy. I can't write as efficient a code as possible, like you. So if I increase the cache size, the miss rate decreases, but what increases? If the miss rate increases,
time.
what hit time increases? Why does the hit time increase? Because you have to search more entries, your hit time increases. Because what do you mean by searching in the cache? These are all made up of comparators and muxes. Even though you might keep the associativity the same, you have to have the indexing that goes into this particular cache, which means that there is some hardware logic that is going into it. If, let's say, I decrease the miss rate by, instead of the miss rate being 10%, I make it 5%. I have reduced the miss rate by half. Right? I have reduced the miss rate by half. But instead of the hit time being 1 cycle, now it is, let's say, instead of the hit time being 2 cycles, it is just 3 cycles. I have not even doubled the hit time. But which design will you pick? Will you go with the 10% miss rate and 2 cycle hit time, or 3 cycle hit time with 5% miss rate?
Sir, if miss penalty is very high, then I think it can work.
If the miss penalty is, yes, excellent. Who told this answer? Oh, sorry. Who said this answer?
Aditya, sir.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think today I'm not able to register anybody's name. Yeah. There's one more component called miss penalty. Let's say miss penalty is the same. Let's say miss penalty is 100 cycles. I'm okay with 100 cycles. And it's very less. Then I would go with the hit time of 2 cycles. But these again are design choices, right? So I don't know what is the right choice. But the idea is that, yeah, go ahead.
So one more thing can be there, like we should reduce the hit time because we should make the common case faster.
Yes. One is to make the common case faster because 90% of the time it's hit. So I make the common case faster. That's good. Okay. So I can increase the associativity. Yes. If I increase the associativity, the miss rate decreases. But what increases? If I increase the
Hit time.
hit time increases, right? Because the number of ways that you are searching is higher. It's like the car parking example that we saw, right? We already saw that if it's a 4-way associative cache or a 4-way associative parking lot, then I can search the 4 cars in parallel or one after the other easily. But if it was 16, then I have to search for 16, which means that the hit time increases. So even though the miss rate decreases, by increasing the associativity, hit time decreases. So hit time also increases. So miss rate decreases, hit time increases. Again, I don't know the answer. If I increase the block,
So you said you'll be searching parallelly, right?
yes.
So how will the time increase? It'll just be like inefficient.
So right. So I, like once I search, they will all be connected to one mux, which will actually say, okay, is there a hit or not, right? So that mux becomes bigger and bigger.
Okay, yeah. It's not completely bad.
Yeah, it's not, I can't do it, right? Because then I see, let's say there are 4 things in parallel. Okay. Even though you search them in parallel, you have to route this data like this. So which means that for that, it depends on the size of the circuit that is doing it. So even though you might not blow up the mux, you might have hierarchy of muxes. If you don't, I mean, not for you, I'm just saying for everybody, if you don't know the design of mux, please go ahead and read mux. I know that I said I take a class, but I haven't even taken a pipeline class. So I'll do it sometime, but I would encourage you to read about muxes and things like that. But anyway, okay. So if I increase the associativity, the miss rate decreases, but the hit time increases. If I increase the block size, yes, miss rate decreases, but what increases? Now the hit time doesn't increase, miss penalty doesn't increase. Does anything else increase? If I increase the block size, what increases? So I know miss rate decreases, but what increases?
Sir, you can't be 100% sure that your miss rate decreases because you'll be filling up your cache faster.
Yes. So if I increase the block size, I decrease the miss rate, but I also increase the miss rate. So I don't know what's the right point there, right? Because I might say there's only one block in the cache. If the cache is 8 MB, I'll keep the entire 8 MB as one block. If it was a streaming application, yes, my miss rate has decreased. But if there are any other miss, there's always a miss, right? So any other access, there's always a miss, which means that the miss rate has increased. So there is no, and the other problem is also miss penalty increases. Reason is because Now, when I go to the main memory, if my cache size if the block size is instead of 64 bytes, if I have kept it as 256 bytes, I have to go to the main memory and fetch the 256 bytes, which means that I'm fetching more data from the main memory, which means that the miss penalty might increase. The way I am handling it, of course, I can reduce it, but the way I handle it, is this clear? Somewhat clear, not clear? Please ask me, I can explain again. Yeah, the support. Okay, excellent. This time most of you have understood. Yeah, wake up, others who are not. So average memory access time is equal to hit time plus miss rate into miss penalty. I want to reduce the average memory access time because I want to reduce the stalls in the pipeline. If I have to reduce the average memory access time, I can reduce the hit time, I can reduce the miss rate, I can reduce the miss penalty. So the first thing that we wanted to reduce is reduce the miss rate. So to reduce the miss rate, I can increase the cache size, increase the associativity, increase the block size. If I increase the cache size, then the hit time increases. So even though I have reduced the miss rate, the hit time might increase. I might increase the associativity. If I increase the associativity, even though the miss rate might decrease, again, this is debatable, but in general, the miss rate decreases, hit time might increase. If I increase the block size, even though the miss rate decreases, the miss rate can again go up because of the way I have chosen the block size. Right, so, okay, so now let's say I don't want to decrease the miss rate. Maybe I'm come with peace. Maybe I've found out the best design choice for what should be the cache size, what should be the associativity, what should be the block size. I've come up with a good choice for it. But I still want to decrease the average memory access time. So the next thing that I will do is I will reduce the hit time. So how can I reduce the hit time?
By reducing cache size and associativity.
By reducing the cache size and associativity. But if I reduce the cache size and associativity, what happens?
Miss rate will increase.
Miss rate will increase, right? So it's like, I don't know what to do now. So, okay, then I say, okay, I will go to this guy. I say, okay, these two are husband and wife, they are not agreeing with each other. So now I'll reduce the miss penalty. So how can I reduce the miss penalty?
So can't we decrease hit time by implementing different levels of cache?
Excellent. What do you mean by multiple level? Who said this again?
Shritesh.
Okay. Now I'll stop asking, but you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, like if we have different levels of cache, then we can place some cache closer to the CPU, and hence the number of cycles required would be less.
Okay. One thing is, see, when I'm talking about, your answer is right, but it generally, I mean, we don't agree that it reduces the hit time because of having multi-level of cache, because I am talking about the average memory access time of this particular cache. Yeah, I mean, it's debatable. Your answer is right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but in general, if you talk to literature, they don't say that having multi-levels of cache will reduce the hit time. They say that having multi-levels of cache will reduce the miss penalty. Your answer is still hit time. So what Shritesh is saying is this. Shritesh is saying that we have the CPU. Now, instead of having one cache, I will have a tiny cute cache here, and then a bigger cache here, and then main memory here. So there are two levels of cache now here. This is called L1 cache. This is called L2 cache. Level 1 cache, level 2 cache. So what he is trying to say is the level 1 cache, maybe the hit time is just one cycle because it is very small. It is as small as possible. It's very small. So it's one cycle. The level 2 cache is pretty huge. So maybe it is, say, 10 cycles. And then this is, say, 200 cycles. Or say maybe 100 cycles. So now I have reduced the hit time of level 1 cache. So I have reduced the hit time of level 1 cache because it is only one cycle. But have I increased anything else by doing this?
Miss penalty.
I have increased the miss penalty. Why? Because I have to search here and then search here. Right? So I search in the L2 cache and then I go to the main memory. if that was not the case, I could have directly gone to the main memory, but now I have to search in the level 2 cache and then go to the main memory. But in general, literature says that I decrease the miss penalty by having multi-levels of cache. Why is that? So I have told
So
you the answer.
suppose you're on the L1 level, so now your miss penalty is 10 cycles instead of 100
Yeah,
cycles.
in general, it's 10 cycle. In general, it's 10 cycle, but it's not always 10 cycles. That's why they say, if I have multi-levels of cache, the miss penalty reduces. Now, if you think about L1 cache, can you tell me what's the formula for average memory access time of L1? What is the average memory access time of L1 cache?
Hit time of L1
Hit time of L1
plus
plus
miss rate into average time of L2, I think.
yes, right. So it's miss rate of L1, hit time of L1. So hit time of L1 plus miss rate of L1 into miss penalty of L1. What is the miss penalty of L1? It is the average memory access time of
L2.
L2. But what is this? We already know a formula for this, right? This is hit time of L2 plus miss rate of L2 into miss penalty of L2. So the average memory access time is now 2 levels. So it's hit time of L1 plus miss rate of L1 into hit time of L2 plus miss rate of L2 into miss penalty of L2. So the miss penalty, if I didn't have L2 cache, would have been 100 cycles, but now the miss penalty has reduced. So that's why you say I have multi-level caches. If I have multi-level caches, I reduce the miss penalty. Of course, you can also say that I reduce hit time. I'm not denying it, but general, I don't want you to get confused if you see the literature. So the literature says that one way to reduce the miss penalty is to have multi-levels of cache. Is this clear? Is this clear or not clear?
It's clear, sir.
Okay. 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 Any other way to reduce the miss penalty? Any other way to reduce miss penalty? Okay, we'll take a break for 4-5 minutes. But if you have questions, I'll anyway be here. But we'll take 3-4 minutes break. Please go and have a cup of coffee and come back. Unfortunately, I can't do it. Yeah. We'll pause the report. Okay, so I hope, welcome back. So I hope it was clear till now. So we said that the average memory access time of L1 is hit time of L1 plus miss rate of L1 into miss penalty of L2, which miss penalty of L2 is hit time of L2 plus miss rate of L2 into miss penalty of L2. Right. So this is what the equation looks like. So I can reduce the miss penalty. But can I reduce the miss penalty in any other way? So did you get a chance to think about it? No other way to reduce the miss penalty? Come on. So we already discussed this. We already discussed one more way to reduce the miss penalty in today's class.
The store queue.
Yes, right. So let's say I have a CPU, then I have a cache here. Let's say this is L1 cache. And this is L2 cache. This is the main memory. Okay. This L1 has generated a write, and then it has generated a read. So now, let's say this write has gone to L2, and then it generates a read. Now I can tell the L2 to service the read first and then the write. So give priority to reads, then follow it with a write. So if I give priorities to read, I'm not tampering I'm not tampering the behavior of the program. Right? As long as I'm keeping track of what comes first and what comes next. If one write and one read comes to L2, I can always try to service the read first and then follow it up with the write. So this priority, I mean, this way of giving reads priority over writes, I can reduce the miss penalty, because if I had performed the write first and then read, if I had performed the write first and then read, what would have happened is I would have waited for the write to complete and then taken up the read. So the amount of cycles I would have spent on L2 would have been higher. But since I have the read first, the miss penalty is reduced. This is much more pronounced in the main memory systems, where this main memory, let's say I come up with the design, let me know if the design is right or wrong. I have a write queue. So this write queue has certain number of entries. Let's say it has 8 entries. Okay. So now the CPU can generate a read or a write. I don't know what it will generate. When I say CPU, of course, it's coming from L2. Now, one way is I don't have the write queue. If it's a read, I go directly to the main memory, read it from the main memory and send it. If it's a write, I directly go to the main memory, write it and say, give an acknowledgement saying that yes, this write is complete. Or I don't even give the acknowledgement. I'm not worried about it. But if there's a write, I write it to the main memory. If there's a read, I write it to the main memory and bring it back. But now I've come up with a design where I have a write queue which has 8 entries. Okay. So if it's a read, I search in these 8 entries. If it is not there, then I go to the main memory. Or maybe I search in this write queue and go to the main memory in parallel. If it's a hit in this write queue, then I give it back and cancel this read that was happening. Or I can do in any way I want. If it's a write, what do I do? Let's say it was a write 1, then I just write here, write block 1 here. Then I write block 2 here. Then I write block 3 here. I just don't access the memory at all. Now, why am I not accessing the memory? Because if immediately the read comes, let's say my accesses was W1, which was write to block 1, and then read to block 8, and then write block 2. Initially, if this was no write queue, this would have taken 100 cycles, then this would have been taken 100 cycles. But since this write 1 is now stored in the write queue, when R8 comes, it is 100 cycles. So immediately I'm servicing the read. So immediately I'm servicing the read. I keep track of how many entries are being used in the main memory, in the write queue. If it moves some watermark, I have some water level mark. If it crosses some threshold, I flush out this entire write queue to the main memory. I flush out this entire write queue to the main memory and free it up. Now, there are many advantages to this. One is that the read is taking priority over write, which means that the miss penalty of L2 is reduced. There might be such a case where the system might say W1, R8, W1, R9, W1, R10. In the previous design, these 3 would have generated 3 different writes to the system, to the main memory. But now it will generate only 1 write to the main memory. So this is called write merging. You merge the writes because they are to the same location. By giving priority, if you didn't understand, this is fine. But by giving priority for reads over writes, I can reduce the miss penalty. So that's one more way to reduce the miss penalty. So now recapping it back, I can reduce the hit time, I can reduce the miss rate, I can reduce the miss penalty. The way to reduce the miss rate, is I increase the cache size, better replacement policy, increase the associativity, increase the clock save. Of course, I can come up with an ML technique to reduce the come up with a better replacement policy, but then the complexity increases, which means that the power requirement, the hardware, the complexity, the time to replace a block might increase, and that might not be the best way, even though I know that replacement policy is better. But if I increase the cache size, even though I reduce the miss rate, I might increase the hit time. So this is just going back and forth. So if I want to decrease the hit time, I can decrease the cache size. If I decrease the cache size, yes, hit time reduces, but the miss rate increases. So then somebody, we said that, okay, we want to reduce the miss penalty. Maybe one way to reduce the miss penalty is to have multi-levels for cache. So I have L1 cache, L2 cache. So I have a small cache, small size cache, which is very close to the CPU, the closest to the CPU, where the hit time is 1, but maybe it is around 8 kilobytes to 32 kilobytes. Then I have L2 cache, which is bigger, but the hit time of the L2 cache is higher, and which means that the search time is higher, but the miss rate is lower for L2. So then one more way to reduce miss penalty is to give priority for reads over writes. Is this clear till now, or somewhat clear? So no questions?
Sir, how much time does it take when the write queue flushes?
Yeah, it takes some time. So there is, you block out the memory for some time. Again, there are choices for that design also that we'll be seeing maybe 6-7 classes down the line. So how do I design the memory? Like how do I design the write queue such that I can reduce the time it takes to block out the memory? Any other questions? Okay. Okay. Since you don't have any questions, I will have a question. I have a question now as usual. So I have 2 levels of cache. So now everybody is convinced that I need to have 2 levels of cache because I want to reduce the miss penalty. I have the main memory. So let's say the CPU generated an address. It did not find it here. It did not find it here. So it go to the main memory. So I brought a block B1. Okay. So I did not find it in L1 cache. I did not find it in L2 cache. I brought that block B1. Now should I keep it in L2? Should I keep it in L1? Should I keep it in both? Or should I not keep that block at all? What will be your answer?
Sir, I think a bigger chunk can be held in L2 and a small portion can be held in L1.
No, right? Let's say the block size of both is 64 bytes.
Then, sir, I think you can put it in both the blocks.
Okay. Aditya is saying we'll keep it in both. Does anybody have any other answer? What happens if I keep it in both? Let's say this was 8 kilobytes and this is 32 kilobytes. You're duplicating the 8 kilobyte memory here, right? Which means that the effective size of L2 is how much? What's this effective size? Because whatever is there, you're keeping it here, right? Because whenever you bring a block, you're keeping it in L2 also. Right? So whatever you're bringing, whenever you're bringing a block, you're not just keeping it in L1, you're also keeping it in L2, which means that you have duplicated the data, right? Which means that this is a superset of L2 is a superset of L1. L1 is a subset of L2, which means that if this is 32 KB, this is 8 KB, what effective cache size are you using of L2? What effective size are you using? 24 KB, right?
24.
KB. Yeah, so will you be happy with Aditya's design?
Sir, I think it's okay, but if you don't want to do this, you can keep it in L1, and then when you remove something.
No, but
from
why?
L2,
No, it's not okay, right? So
Um,
I don't want to do the other thing. I want to see whether if there's no flaw, I am ready to do this. I'm not averse to this. But what is that I'm gaining by doing this? That's the question I am more interested in. What is that I'm gaining if I keep it in both L1 and L2? Is it because it's simple? I don't see it simple. Can you convince me that I have to keep it in both?
If you don't keep it, then what's the point of having 2 cache? Because if you only keep it in L2, then if it again generates the same block address, then the L1 will always give a miss, and then you will.
Okay, wait. Oh, sorry, I was distracted. Wait, I was distracted because this Clash of Clans, somebody posted a video. I'll go back again. So does anybody play Clash of Clans? That was not on recording. Okay. Yeah, I was asking, why do you want to keep it in both? Yeah, you were saying something. Can you tell me again?
Sir, I was saying that then if we don't keep it in both, then what's the point of having two caches?
Okay. I will give you an so why not, right? So I keep block B1 here, right? And let's say, okay, I will give you a design. Tell me what's the flaw in that design. I have two levels of cache, L1, L2, and the main. I bring a block B1. I don't keep it in L2. I keep it here. Okay. At some point, this B1 will be kicked out. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
When it is kicked out, I write it to the L2. And when it is kicked out, I write, if the dirty bit is 1, I write it to the main memory. Here, I don't check the dirty bit. Any block that is kicked out, I write it to the main memory. Here, I check the dirty bit. So now, what is the flaw in this design? I'm usually utilizing both the caches, right?
Sir, this is good, sir. But again, when you're writing from L1 to L2, maybe you need a whole store queue sort of thing again.
Yeah, that's okay, right? That's not in the critical path. Now, we have already convinced ourselves that the store queue is not, I'm not worried about the critical path. But
Okay.
here, think about it, right? See, it's real estate, right? Why do people construct one floor after the other floor? If given an option, everybody would construct only the ground floor, right? So it's better. But why do I have 1 or 2, 3 floors? Because the real estate is expensive. Now you say the real estate is expensive, but I'll keep the half of the site where I will have, like, there's a single house, but I will duplicate both whatever I'm doing on both the floors. That's waste of space, right? Waste of real estate. See, you are convinced that this 8 kilobyte, the 32 kilobyte is expensive circuit, expensive transistors that you have paid money for, and you are duplicating 8 kilobytes because of what? I don't even know why you are duplicating it. So anybody else wants to answer this?
So does it reduce complexity?
Yeah, you should tell me. Does it reduce complexity? Gitin George, today you're very silent. You're not following.
Hi, sir. I'm usually silent these days. Okay, like the question is, from the first block, I mean, from the first level of cache, can we directly write into the main memory?
No,
Is
that's
that
not
a
the question.
possibility?
No.
Otherwise,
The
we are
question
having
is,
some.
no. The question is, when I bring a block B1 from the main memory, do I write it to the L2 and then to L1? Both? Do I make a copy of them? Both?
Like I would wish to write it to L1 first, and when it is finished, then I can bring more into the L2 cache, right? Just like you said, no duplication.
Cannot duplication. So now, but some people in the class are stuck with this design because for some reason. But
Yeah, I don't know the reason. Like I don't know whether there is any issue with that, because if you are kicking some block, what happens? Actually, like if you are kicking some block from L1, what will happen? Can you explain that? Then maybe we'll get an idea.
For them, for their design?
For all of us, like maybe we'll get some more idea.
No, for their design or for my design? See, I am coming up with this design. They have come up with this design. They said that when they bring a block, they want to keep it in both L1 and L2. I'm saying when you bring a block, you keep it only in L1. When it is kicked out, you keep it in L2. And
Sir, in your design.
In my design, when it's kicked out from L1, I write it to L2. And why do I need to? Okay, why do I write it to L2?
Okay, like I'm getting some idea now. So you may be using it again.
Yeah, right. Because of the spatial locality.
Yeah, but the spatial locality is somewhere like there is lesser chance for that. So you are keeping it in L2.
Sorry, because of temporal locality. Yes, right. So because this block was initialized again, and there's no space to store here, so I'm keeping it here.
So you bring it to the second level. So I'll prefer your thing.
Yeah, it's like this is a cache for this particular cache, right? That's what I'm using it for.
Yeah.
But now these guys are saying we'll keep it in both here.
I don't see any advantage for that, like straight away.
Okay, any other answer?
Sir, the only thing I can see is that in your design, when you are writing into the second layer of cache, that will cause some cycles, right?
No, here also it will cause some cycles, right? Because I have to write both here and
There
here.
you already have it in the second layer of cache, right? You are loading it into the both
No,
the caches.
no.
Oh yeah,
When I'm loading, I have to wait for this. I'm not reducing the writes even in the design.
Yeah, okay.
I have to write it to L2. So in both cases, I'm writing to L2.
Yes.
Sharma ji, so what's this answer?
Sir, I'm not getting a clear idea. But if like, according to your design, if you are doing this, then we can actually just merge the two caches.
No, right? My hit time is reduced here.
Yes, sir.
That's why I have multi-level caches, and miss penalty is also reduced. Okay. So there are actually 3 designs for this multi-level caches. One is called an inclusive cache. So I have L1 cache, I have L2 cache, I have main memory. So when I bring a block, I write it both to the L1 and L2. L1 is always inclusive. Sorry, L2 is always inclusive of L2 inclusive of L1. So L2 is always inclusive of L1 cache. So when I bring a block, I write it both to L1 and L2. So this is called an inclusive cache. So at some point, if a block is kicked out from the L2, for some reason, if the block is kicked out from L2, you will ask the L1 also to remove that block, because you have to maintain the strict inclusivity principle. So L2 should have whatever L1 has. So if L2 kicks out a block, L1 is also asked to, if the L1 has the same block, I ask the L1 to kick out that block. So this is called an inclusive cache. There's an exclusive cache. So how does it look like? It has CPU, it has cache. So when I bring a block, I bring only to L1. When the L1 block is kicked out, I bring it to L2, and then I remove it when it's kicked out. This is called an exclusive cache because L2 does not have any data that it has. So if again there is a hit, let's say there was a hit again in L2, then I remove it and give it back to L1. I remove that block from L2 and give it back to L1. So this is called an exclusive cache. So nothing of L1 is duplicated at L2. There is also a cache called non-inclusive cache. When I bring a block, I write it both to L1 and L2. So when I'm bringing a block, I maintain inclusivity. But if a block is kicked out from L2, I don't force the L1 to kick out the same block. So it is actually neither an exclusive cache nor an inclusive cache. That's why it's called a non-inclusive cache. So there might be a chance that there is a block in L1 which the L2 doesn't have. So Intel has never used exclusive caches as far as I know. Intel started with inclusive caches, then they moved to non-inclusive caches. AMD, for most of their existence, they used exclusive caches, but they also now slowly moved to non-inclusive caches. So if you take AMD Optron or any of those processors, they used exclusive caches. If you take Intel Pentium 4, Pentium 3, Pentium 2, they used non-inclusive caches. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. Exclusive cache is very straightforward. You can see that the exclusive cache is utilizing the memory capacity to the best because nothing is duplicated. If you think about inclusive cache, it's just dumb way of duplicating L1 in L2, but there's an advantage of doing it. Of course, there's an advantage of going with a non-inclusive cache also. So we'll see this in the next class. Is this clear till now?
Sir, could you please explain the non-inclusive one again? The policy of when something gets kicked out.
Okay, so for that to explain, I will ask you a question here. So I said that in inclusive cache, when I kick out a block from L2, I should make sure that I should kick out a block from L1. Can such a scenario exist? Can such a scenario can it happen, right? It should not happen, right? Because L2 is bigger than L1. Can you come up with a scenario where a block is so let's say both are following LRU replacement policy. Both are following LRU replacement policy. There's a block B1. There is a block B1 that has become a candidate for removing from L2. But it is not a candidate for replacement in L1. Can such a scenario exist?
Sir, no, sir. It would have already been removed from L1, right?
Yes. But then why did you agree to the inclusive cache when I said that?
So what's the question now?
No, see, what did I say about inclusive cache? I said that when I remove a block from L2, right? When I remove a block from L2, I make sure that I send a message to L1 to remove the same block in L1 if L1 has that block. Okay. Now the block is B1. The B1 has become a candidate for removing from L2 because it is getting replaced by some other block. Is it okay till now?
Yes, sir. If you're following LRU, it would have already been removed from L1.
From L1, right? It would have been already removed from L1. So why should I send a message to L1?
Yeah, you don't need to if you're following LRU. But if you were following like random or something,
No,
then
let's say I'm following LRU.
yeah, then you don't need to send a message.
But I say you should send it.
I don't know why then.
Yeah, can you think about it? Can everybody think? I mean, it's not about her, right? It's for the entire class. Can everybody think about it? See, I made a statement. You agreed to that statement. When I said that, okay, if I'm kicking out a block from L2, I'm kicking out from L1, you should have said, array, L1 is 8 KB, L2 is 8 KB. So how can there be a block that is getting replaced in L2, but not in L1? You should have told me that, right? Okay, think about it.
Sir, once L1 is completely used, then we are still bringing more blocks into L2, right? So if they get
no, right?
used,
No, right? I am not bringing any extra block. Only the block that was not found. I mean, only that block that was not found in L2, I am bringing it, which means that it was not found in L1 also. Okay. I am not bringing a block like this. I am not bringing a block only in L2. When am I bringing a block in L2? When the CPU generated a request, I
so you
searched
have to
in
kick
L1.
something in L1. So you kick that block in L1. Okay, this is confusing. 1 second, I'll think about getting something.
Yeah, please think about it.